I have just opened a self-invested personal pension, or SIPP for short, and this video is going to be all about SIPPs, which is a question I get quite commonly. I'm going to be going through what they are, what to look for when opening up a SIPP, comparing them very briefly to workplace pensions, and then finally touching on why I opened one and why it works for me, as well as my approach in terms of what platform I'm using and what investments I'm going to be making. Without further ado, to get straight into what is a SIPP is simply a type of investment account. As I talk about quite a lot, there's 3 layers to invest in: a platform, an account, and then an actual investment. And a SIPP is step number 2, is the type of account. It's just the wrapper that will then hold your investments.
Boom.
There are obviously a few different types of pensions. You have a state pension from the government, a workplace pension from your employer, and then a SIPP, which is a private pension, a personal pension. And the main difference here compared to the other two is there is more control and you have more flexibility over what you invest into. For example, I have a workplace pension and the options of what I can invest into is more limited. With a SIPP, it's essentially like a DIY pension where you have a lot more flexibility over what you can invest into. For example, you can invest into individual shares. A pension in general, including a SIPP, gives you tax relief. So what that means is if you're a basic rate taxpayer, for every £80 you contribute to a pension, including into a SIPP, you get an extra £20 free from HMRC. You get a 25% top up, and that is 20% tax relief. If you're a higher rate taxpayer, you get 40% tax relief. So if you contribute £60, you get £40 from HMRC. And if you're an additional rate taxpayer, you get 45% tax relief, and the maths works the exact same.
I like money.
This is why pensions are very appealing, particularly as your income increases, because not only using the pension can you avoid some taxes as contributions are taken out of your gross pay, you could also get some free money, some tax relief from HMRC to top up your overall investment pot. SIPPs really are ideal for people who are self-employed. If you have an employer and have a workplace pension, it probably makes more sense to use that workplace pension, and I'm going to come on to why later on in the video. But SIPPs are really good for self-employed people who want to start contributing and saving and investing for retirement. To give a few more facts about SIPPs and round off what a SIPP is, the max contribution you can put into pensions in general, once again including a SIPP as a type of pension, is £40,000 per tax year. You can't access a pension until you're 55, which is going to be increasing until you're 57, which is one of the downsides of pensions compared to other accounts like ISAs, is that they're inflexible and you can't access them until later on in life. And a good thing about pensions is the money passes tax-free to your designated beneficiary if you were to pass away.
Call an ambulance, but not for me.
So that is what a SIPP is, but in short, it's just a type of pension, and it's specifically a type of account. It's a wrapper that is going to hold our investments that are then hopefully going to grow and compound over our lifetime. We're going to get some tax relief, and then one day we can draw down from our pension pot and use this as part of our retirement to hopefully one day live off of this money. The next part of this video now is what to look for in a SIPP if you're looking at opening one. So the first thing to touch on here is there are different platforms as you'd expect, and each platform is slightly unique, but you can group them into different buckets. You have low cost DIY platforms that offer SIPPs like Vanguard. You have more sort of full service or higher cost DIY platforms that offer SIPPs like Hargreaves Lansdown, and you also have robo-advisors where it's not as DIY, it's more hands-off. They usually charge a higher fee, and that is things like Nutmeg and Wealthify. So just like when it comes to stocks and shares, ISAs, there's quite a few options and platforms to choose from. You need to sort of assess them all and then go down the route which is best for you. In terms of what to actually look for, the same criteria apply really to open up any sort of investment account, a stocks and shares ISA, a pension, whatever it is. An important thing is fees. You want to look at fees. The lower the fee, the better, because the more money you have compounding over the long term, and you want to be sure of all the fees you're going to be paying. You don't want to be investing into a pension for the next 40 years and then see you've been charged extortionate fees. You want to get that right from the start. The second thing is investment options. As I mentioned, SIPPs give more flexibility compared to a workplace pension, for example, because you can invest into individual shares. You want to make sure whether platform you're using has the right investment products for you, the right investment offering, and I always say start with the end in mind. Figure out what you want to invest into and then work your way back and see which platform offers what you want to invest into. For me, I'm just going to be investing into individual funds, mainly global index funds, as we're going to come on to shortly, and that helps shape what platform is best for me. And then the third thing I'd say is trust, safety, reputation, that sort of bucket. Ultimately, you're going to be investing, hopefully with this one platform, in this one SIPP for decades to come. So you want to make sure you trust the company that are going to be around for the future and hopefully outlive you and your SIPP. So I'd say fees, options, and then trust and safety. Before I go into why I specifically opened up a SIPP and my approach, I wanted to touch on SIPPs and workplace pensions. The first thing to say is you can have both a workplace pension and a SIPP. But a question I got on Twitter when I said that I had opened up a SIPP essentially was asking if it is worth it to open up a SIPP if you already have a workplace pension. In general, I would say the answer is no, but it does depend. The first thing to say here is if you have a workplace pension, you're probably getting some sort of employer match, and you definitely want to take advantage of that because an employer match is literally free money. So it's much better using your employer match and taking advantage of that. If, however, you want to contribute more than your employer match, it could be worth opening up a SIPP. Personally, I try to keep my approach simple, so I like to have all my sort of pots together. So I'd rather have one large pension than two smaller pensions. But if your workplace pension is high fee or it doesn't offer the investments that you want, or you want more flexibility, that is when going down the route of a SIPP could be beneficial after you've maximised your employer match contribution. The only thing I would say on this though, sometimes employers, particularly large employers, because they have so many thousands of employees, they can negotiate terms with the pension providers to get some sort of discounts or some benefits on things like platform fees and fund fees. So I definitely would say check out the fees you're paying on the workplace pension already, and it could just be easier to up your contributions into that. But if you're not happy with that, then of course you can open up a SIPP and then contribute to both at the same time. I can make a full video on comparing a SIPP and a workplace pension and different scenarios. If that's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments below. As that was a very quick answer, but hopefully that summarizes the key points well. So why am I opening up a SIPP? I imagine most people thought I'm opening up a SIPP because I want to contribute more to my pension and have more flexibility. It's actually not that reason. The reason why I'm opening one personally is to withdraw money tax efficiently from my company, which obviously is this brand, Making Money Simple. As I am an employee and I work a 9-to-5 job, taking a salary from the company is not very tax efficient because I have to pay income tax, national insurance, and student loan, and my marginal tax rate is very high. So that doesn't make sense. Another way to withdraw money from the company is through dividends, and that is what I've done in the last tax year towards the end of the tax year. That is slightly more tax efficient than drawing a salary, but I still have to pay dividend tax, which has recently increased, and student loan as well, because you have to pay student loan repayments on any dividends at 9%. So the third way to then take money from a company is through a pension, and that is what I'm doing now. The benefit of that is I get to avoid 19% corporation tax, as company pension contributions is a taxable expense or an allowable expense for a company. So if I make, say, £1,000 across the year and I contribute £500 to a pension from the company, then my sort of taxable profit, my taxable income is then only £500 because the £500 pension contribution is an allowable expense. So I'm in quite a specific situation, and this is why I've opened up a SIPP to withdraw money from the company tax efficiently over time, and obviously this will then get the money in my own name and I can build up my private pension pot over the long term. I'm still, of course, going to keep my workplace pension because I get 6% from my employer, and I'm still matching that 6%, and that's still going to stay the same and hopefully grow over the long term. That's all in a global fund. And now I've also got a SIPP where I'm contributing from my own company, and as we're going to see in a sec, that is also in a global fund, and hopefully that will then grow in parallel over the long term until I'm 55, 57 and can access the money. The final thing I wanted to touch on is my approach, and you're probably not going to be surprised here if you follow me at all. It's pretty much the exact same as the approach I follow with my stocks and shares ISA. Before I get into my approach though, just to quickly say, I actually am transferring an old pension which had about £800. This isn't my main workplace pension that I now use and contribute to and have done for the last sort of 3 years nearly. This is a separate old workplace pension I used to have. I'm transferring that with £800. That will then form the base of my new SIPP, and then my plan is to contribute every single month to the SIPP through my company account on the same day every month. My approach then, and going through my own 3-step blueprint that I always talk about: number 1, platform, Vanguard. Probably not many surprises here. I made a whole video which I'll link somewhere on why I use Vanguard, but an extra point to make here is that as I already have my stocks and shares ISA with Vanguard, in terms of ease, accessibility, reducing the admin burden of how many accounts I have, it makes sense for me to have it all under one roof, the Vanguard roof, as that's my preferred platform. Number 2 is account, which we know is a SIPP, a type of pension. And in number 3, investment. Once again, no surprise, made videos on this time and time again. A global index fund is going to be my main and sole investment. 100% of my money in this SIPP is going to be going into the FTSE Global All Cap. This is 100% of my stocks and shares ISA, and it will now be 100% of my SIPP as well. I made videos on why I use Vanguard, why I use global funds, and all that stuff, so it's worth checking those out if you want to see a bit more detail on why I follow that approach. I also go through that 3-step blueprint in a lot of detail in my ebook, Stop, Wait and Start Investing, and that'll be linked in my bio. If you don't like it, if you don't learn anything, just let me know and I'll give you your money back. There's a 30-day money back guarantee, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it, and hopefully it will get you to stop waiting, start investing, and actually understand what you're doing as well. And that wraps up this video on SIPPs. Now that I have got a SIPP, these will feature in my Vanguard portfolio updates. I'll also now am more inclined to make SIPP videos, as it's a common question I get on SIPPs because a lot of people that follow me are self-employed, and now I've got a workplace pension for employees that follow me, and I've also got a SIPP for self-employed people that follow me. So hopefully I can make videos on both of these types of pensions going forward to help out whatever situation you are in. Any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.